Hi, my name is Gibson, and I'm the co-owner and creator of the Personal Development School. This is your daily breakthrough video, and in this video, I want to talk to you a little bit about the concept or idea of the emotionally unavailable parent, and specifically how this applies to the dismissive avoidant attachment style and some reparenting we can do from a remothering and a refathering perspective in order to be able to start healing from some of these wounds, okay? And this is really specific to the context of meeting our own needs and kind of jumps off of what we were talking about in earlier videos. So before I dive into this, we do have a whole bunch of info on this in a great amount of detail with like a 15-page workbook in the Reparenting course inside of the school, and also in our Transforming Codependency and Enmeshment and Boundaries courses are super supportive at healing these components within the self. So if you ever want to join, check those out further. We do offer scholarships right now to support our community, especially going back into like quarantine and stuff that's happening in the world time. We have an amazing internal community with like lots of supportive and emotionally like intelligent, working on themselves, amazing people who I'm so impressed with in the questions and the webinars all the time that we have. So anyway, so we have 4 live webinars a week. We have courses in there. The coupon code if you want to join is with you, all one word. It's for 25% off 3-month, 6-month, 12-month membership bundles. And we also have lifetime memberships available. So let's talk about the dismissive avoidant and emotional neglect. So we all know that one of the biggest things, well, I mean, if you've been watching this channel, you're probably really familiar with the concept or idea that the dismissive avoidant attachment style is largely born out of emotional neglect. And this can be like under the radar emotional neglect. This can be, you know, a parent's not just fully emotionally available, even though they're meeting physical needs and, you know, cooking and cleaning and doing things that are beneficial in terms of just like survival and physical needs on a daily basis. And so this naturally has the impact or imprint on a dismissive avoidant child of, you know, them having this component of the self, right? Our emotions are a fundamental part, a very deep intrinsic part of ourselves. And then there's this feeling all the time like the caregiver is rejecting that if the caregiver or caregivers are emotionally unavailable. And so what happens as a byproduct of this is that this child feels like, okay, well, you know, they can't look at the parent and go, oh, my parents are emotionally unavailable. All they can make meaning out of that is, oh, there's something wrong with me. And so shame, I am defective, there's something wrong with me is a huge core wound for dismissive avoidance. And usually there's a feeling of lack of safety in an environment if you feel like you're not attuned to by your parent who you completely rely on in order to survive. And so that feeling of emotional disconnect can also create a big core wound of I am unsafe. Now, what can happen as a byproduct of all of this is this individual grows up to take this lack of these really important needs being met into their relationships, because we all tend to operate through the framework of what we know about how we relate to others. And so if we go into our adult lives and we feel like, well, you know, relationships are about being emotionally unavailable because that's what we know from childhood and that's what our experience was, then when people try to be emotionally available and connect to us or bond with us deeply, it can feel like we're so outside of our subconscious comfort zone, and that can feel scary because the subconscious mind wants familiarity. So what we have to be able to do, okay, is realize that this emotional neglect in the form that it takes place creates lack within the psyche, and that lack specifically exists within unmet needs. Okay, we can have wounds that come out of that lack too, which is the meaning we give to those unmet needs. So for example, we have the unmet need of emotional connection or attunement, and we make that mean I must be defective because people aren't willing to attune to me the way I am to them. So maybe there's something wrong with me, or I am unsafe. But the actual lack exists in the needs not being met in and of themselves. And so a really important tool that we can use is refathering or remothering. And what you can do when you're looking at this, if you are in fact the dismissive avoidant attachment style, and wherever this lack is filled, healing happens, okay? Sometimes dismissive avoidants end up dating secure people, and indirectly over time, if the relationship does work, they get some of those unmet needs met. But the big problem and barrier can be if it's happening too quickly or too far outside of this individual's subconscious comfort zone, then they'll often reject it. So for example, if you're a dismissive avoidant and you have somebody wanting to like give you love and see you and hear you and validate your feelings and meet your needs and emotionally support you and attune to you. But if that's happening and somebody can bring that to the table, 8 or 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10, but that feels like too much, then if it happens too quickly or takes place too abruptly or too like intensely, then a dismissive avoidant will reject it and will be like, no, this is unfamiliar and this feels weird and unsafe and I don't like this. And so sometimes what you'll see is with somebody who's more secure, that will take place gradually over time, where there will be some consistency, but the secure person will sort of recognize, because they tend to be quite good at seeing people outside of their own wounds or fears. And so what you'll see is they can recognize that this needs to take place slowly, and they'll respect the need for space for the dismissive avoidant, and eventually that lack heals. But I just want to be really clear as I say all of this and touch on this point, that it is not a person's responsibility to heal another person. And it is absolutely not a person's responsibility to heal another person if their needs are not being met and there isn't some form of equal exchange or healthy balance or interdependency in a relationship to begin with. So just being mindful of that. But what can take place and what's really important is that this dismissive avoidant individual, as they grow up, remothers or refathers themselves so that they can heal that lack, so that they can then attach in a healthy form or way to others. And I'm going to make a separate video about this in the future, but I see a lot of the time that dismissive avoidants really fear moving into healthy interdependency because they associate this as giving up their sense of self. And so they'll try to do things to block it, even though it's actually a part of progress on the path of healing. So, but that's a separate topic and it's a really important one. So if you are the dismissive avoidant, or if you have a dismissive avoidant friend or family member who you know wants to heal or wants to work on themselves, what a dismissive avoidant must do is make a list of all the things they didn't get met from mom, and really start by looking at the 7 areas of life: career, financial, mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, and relationships. And relationships can be broken down into friends, family, romantic. And largely, obviously, there's going to be a parental focus because we're talking about reparenting. But make a list of the things that weren't met, and then make a list of specifically, if they were being met, what that would look like. So if you weren't getting, emotional connection met, what is emotional connection for you? Is it somebody like validating your feelings? Is it somebody hugging you and holding you? Is it somebody checking on you often? Is it somebody, opening up dialogue about your needs? Like, what does that look like? And get as specific as possible. And then in sort of a third column, if you will, you want to write some strategies for how to give this to yourself. And the same thing applies to father, okay? What needs did not get met? How can, what specifically does that look like, and how can you give those things to yourself? And notice that usually, just because of like mother and father qualities, there's usually a dynamic where mother is like the more nurturing, emotionally available, attuned figure. And it doesn't always have to be this way. And I'm not trying to be like stereotypical, but obviously these are components that are good frameworks to use as prompts. And then father is more of like the protector, provider, safekeeper, supporter, in terms of things that scare you or in tough times. And so try to look at those through like those different roles. Of course, both are really important to meet those emotional needs, but you'll see that those emotional needs are being met in slightly different forms. So you can even take like a back step and be like, what does a mother mean to me? Like, what qualities would I associate there? What qualities would I associate with a father? And then break those down, and to help those questions give you further prompts into the insight for what specifically it would look like for your needs to be met in the forms that they were missing. So I hope this all makes sense. This is such an important topic. Again, this comes up so much inside the reparenting course, like how to actually reparent yourself. So you can always do a deep dive into that, but let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.